Hello ladies, I'm Mrs. Sherman and I have a blog for which I will leave a link in the description box here. I don't have comments on YouTube. I'd really prefer you go over to my blog because I'm making these videos for my blog. I'd like you to go over there and leave a comment and see what everyone else is saying, and go down the blog roll, visit my friends too. There are a lot of homemakers around and it's very supportive to read some of their blogs. I'm making these videos as homemaker support because as a homemaker, whether you're a new homemaker, whether you are seasoned, or whether you are thinking about becoming a homemaker, you have to know that it is not based on group approval, and you're not going to get a summary of your of how well you've done at the end of the month, and you're not getting any awards. So you've got to award yourself and reward yourself by doing a good job. And so this is one thing, you have to be self-motivated. It's like being self-employed, and you kind of have to go solo. And if you have your family around you, that's wonderful, but not everybody will have family that approves of them or that is supportive of them. So I'm here to give you a little bit of a pep talk, and if you've got something you'd like to do that you need to get busy doing, please don't sit here and watch me because I'm not doing anything. And if you need to, you can go to another video and watch someone clean house. Anything you need to know will be there. And one of the reasons that I'm doing this kind of a video is because you can listen while you sort something, fold something, load something, unload something, or sweep something, and you don't have to watch. That's I love to listen to things while I keep house, or maybe have one of my family read to me or talk to me while I work. And I used to get on the phone with a friend and turn the speaker on, and she and I would talk while we did things, and then at the end tell us how much we got done. So I think that this kind of a video helps people feel that they're a little bit isolated at home, and to give them motivation and reassure them that what they're doing is really, really important. It's not like a group, like you get group support or group approval like at a the type of occupation in the corporate world, or not even like a church. At least in a church you have a group there and you might do things together to accomplish something. But at home is so unique because you're alone most of the time, and you have to create a workplace for yourself and make it pleasant for other people too. And so occasionally it's nice to hear someone who is talking about this while you work. So let's go back to an era before us that was, I would say, my great-grandmother, because I'm from the olden times, but it would be your great-great-grandmother. And how did they feel motivated to get up, do the wash by hand, pin it on the line, dress their hair, get some bread rising, put a meal on the in the house to simmer, while they went outside and did other things, and get dressed and put on a clean apron. Where did they get their determination and their motivation? Well, in those days, there was a different way of looking at things. I'd like to restore that. I'd like to bring that back. The way of looking at things is that if it's something that needs to be done and it's totally dependent on you, then you're responsible to do it. And you know that even though no one is watching and no one notices, that this is that God does, and that you do, and that your family does, and you build a reputation for yourself, because other people, though they may not say anything, will notice your dedication to your home and your family. So before this era, there was a totally different feeling than the one of today, and the one of today is, why should I get dressed, fix my hair, get up, and get a clean house when no one's going to be here today and no one's noticing except my family? Because you're providing memories for the people that are around you. You're providing an example for them, and you're training yourself in good habits so that by the time you are of a certain age, you have a reputation for yourself, and you're developing your credentials by becoming skilled at homemaking. So before this era, uh, women felt driven by a inner heartfelt desire to keep the race alive, keep the human race going. And that is, we need to restore that our hearts beat for these people and for our homes. And home is the most sadly neglected place, and the house too. Home and house are interchangeable in the Bible, but home is the most neglected place in the world. And so if you've decided to be home, then you've decided to do a great thing. And it's hard work. It really is hard work. And it just seems like it's unending. But there are some things that eventually you'll catch up with, and you'll be awfully glad that you persisted. So we need to kind of get it out of the way that we're going to have kindred spirits and support, because really there's nothing in the Bible that says if you do this, if you become a homemaker and you become a Christian, that you're going to get all this support. We're commanded to love one another as brethren, but that doesn't mean that everyone's always going to behave that way. So you might as well be determined that whether or not anyone supports you, you're going to do this thing. You're going to have an orderly home and happy family. So it was a different way of thinking, and they would probably think we're all very strange, wanting to be in the mood to do something. Instead, they would do something and then they would feel in the mood. So it was very interesting how different everything was. And seasonally too, you had to get certain things done in the summer so that you could survive the winter in some comfort. And so some of you that are living in the hemisphere where it is now winter, you might want to send me a comment and tell me what you think you could have done more of in the winter that would have helped you have a more leisurely and carefree summer. So many times, winter we spend shivering and we're cold, we're not very motivated, and then summer comes upon us almost suddenly, and because we have gotten behind in a lot of things that need to be done in the house, we haven't been able to enjoy sitting outside, having a glass of lemonade, sitting on the swing, because we have been not really prepared for it. And in winter we put a lot of things away that are used in the summer. Well, when summer comes, suddenly we've got to go out and get all that stuff and set it all out so we can use it. And I'd just like to know, what do you think you could have done better in winter that would have helped you this summer? Or what do you think you could have done in the summer that would have prepared you better for the winter? Some people have told me they wish they had spent the summer at least once in a while stitching a couple of blocks together and making a new winter blanket. Some people have said they wish that they had spent more time preparing and storing food. Other people say they wish they had spent more time. Now in the winter, if they'd spent more time, this was mentioned, spent more time cleaning out your clothes closet, cleaning out your drawers and the kitchen cabinets and things like that, so that you can be free in the summer to go and enjoy the good weather, to go enjoy blueberry picking or strawberry picking, and not have to be tied down to these domestic things that you could have gotten done in the winter. So that's just something to think about. Another thing was a saying. We've got a couple of sayings here. Sloppy living leads to sloppy thinking. Everybody goes through this thing where they feel like they're going a little bit crazy and they can't put their finger on it. But if you sit too much, you can feel that way, feel a little bit less organized, and more confused. And so I would suggest, if you would memorize that, sloppy living leads to sloppy thinking. If your thinking gets a little bit disoriented and disjointed, get up and clean something, get up and sort something, go through your magazines. Join Fly Lady because it's free, and you don't really have to have it coming through your email. You can get on her site, and you can read the daily work, you can read the weekly work, and you can print off all those things and put them in a notebook and use it that way so you don't have to read the emails coming in. But it gives you something to do. I remember she had you cleaning the car once a week, at least, lightly cleaning it. Well, last week I decided that I was going to clean that car for for the year. So I went out there, and I was out there from the cool of the morning at 7 till 3 in the afternoon cleaning it. And of course I took my vinegar with me, and I cleaned and washed and cleaned, and I vacuumed the floors with that little vacuum cleaner I told you about, and cleaned the windows. I couldn't clean the outside of the car, but I did all that cleaning inside. There was not a bit of lint sitting anywhere, not in a crack, nothing. I had a little tiny brush that I brushed everything out, wiped it all down. It smelled wonderful. Carried out a huge bag of trash that had accumulated over the winter, and then forbid everybody to put anything anywhere. You could not even drop a toothpick in the pocket of the door. That thing was so spotless. And Mr. S was so pleased with it, and it motivated him so much. I even took out the seats. I figured out how to get the seats, how to remove the seats and get under them and clean. And he was so motivated by it that he took it somewhere and got paid for a really supreme car wash, you know, for these people that have these expensive cars. And of course we have an old car because we save everything from 1952. You'll have to go back and listen to that video on how that saying developed. So we have an old car, but I had cleaned it so nicely that he took it down to this swanky place and had it washed and triple waxed. Does that thing ever look good? I feel like opening the door and saying, come look at my car, look inside. And it was actually an easier job than cleaning up a room because there was nowhere to be distracted. That car was just a unit. You had to stay with it and clean it. I wonder if I could manage to translate that kind of work to each room. So I just wanted you to know about that because I felt so energized. I wasn't even tired afterwards because the more that I cleaned an area, and also I didn't wait until all the trash was out. I just cleaned it foot by foot, little section by little section, and I used my vinegar and I cleaned the windows and I cleaned the insides of things and got around the steering wheel and everything so that I could see success. So I would clean one seat and then move on to the next, but I wanted to see success as I went. And so it motivated me, and I believe it will motivate you if you will give yourself some success. Then you give yourself more energy and more, your mind becomes sharper and you start to think more logically. So when you clean things like that, you're providing something. And we give people a lot of rides here and there, you know, to church and that sort of thing. So it was kind of a treat, you know, to pick somebody up in that car, and it was so nice. So I don't know if I mentioned this to you already, but Cheryl Mendelson had written a book called Home Comforts, and as I recall, it wasn't just about the things in your home and, you know, the linen closet and the dishes and how to wash them and things like that. It was how to make yourself more comfortable and how to make your family more comfortable. And it was a way of respecting them, and it's human dignity that makes us want to care for our families and care for our homes. And if you're having trouble getting focused, you think about that. And so start with your preparation. Start by preparing your appearance for that very important job. And I mentioned one time, you know, that I had perfume on, and you didn't know I had it on, but I knew, so it felt good. But I was talking to a friend who suggested that I not put perfume on my skin or any kind of spray on my skin, and so I just sprayed on the sleeve of my dress. Especially, she was talking about, you know, as you age, that could age your skin. So, of course, at my age, my skin's so worn out, it doesn't really matter anymore. And by the way, while I'm talking about skin, I am wearing a lip conditioner called, and it's from Wet n Wild, and it's called Dark Plum Frost. Doesn't that sound exciting? And I'm wearing it especially for this video because maybe it will, I don't know, maybe it'll just make you happy. So what would you think about our ancestors if they did not have the motivation to do what they did? And many times I'm sure they were discouraged because A storm could come through and just wipe off the back porch, and I mean, it still happens here. And they would just be like the spider and rebuild. Do you ever notice a spider doesn't care where it is, just rebuilds? And you can wash his house down, and he washes his little web down, and the next day he just gets up and rebuilds it all. And that's the way you have to be, because that's the way that a house is. The dishes you washed today will need washing again tomorrow, and you'll say, oh, I just did that. The floor you swept today will be swept tomorrow, need to be swept tomorrow. The bathroom will be need to clean again. You have to remind yourself, be like the spider, and the Old Testament talks about these creatures as examples of being prepared. And so that is why, since you do have to do it over and over, and it is never really completely done, plus you have to do things that are more of a lasting value, like paint a room or sort through things that need to be discarded, that sort of thing. You have to have a cheerful attitude, and you have to have a motivation and a reward. And I like to reward myself by sitting. I put a stack of reading material somewhere that's new to me, that I haven't read yet, and I'll say to myself, when I get this far, and I get this floor swept, and I get this much done, and I get the door cleaned, I'm going to sit down and read that recipe or that article. Or maybe you have other things that you'd like to do, things you'd like to look at, things that you'd like to watch people make, crafts, things like that, and have that as a motivation. You have to have a cheerful attitude. But of course, the ultimate reward is having a place to live that makes you happy, that is dignified, and that you would rather be there than anywhere else. So years ago, when I was a little bit less content, I would go out and try to get myself cheered up, and I'll notice the things. I took note of what is it that I like about this place or that place or whatever. And it was usually the atmosphere, the color, the music, the scent, the food, the plants, the orderliness, the cleanliness, the sparkliness. And so I adapted all that stuff into my home, or it was a style or something. And I adapted all that into my home until it came to the point where there wasn't anything out there that was even comparable to my home, so it was easier to stay home. Now, there is a scripture, if you want to look up the prayer of Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he said, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." You think of heaven, you think of orderliness, you think of peace, you think of beauty, you think of love, you think of happiness. So whatever's done on earth should be done the way it would be in heaven. And that's how you can create your home to be a, quote, people talk about it as a heavenly place, and that's just a figure of speech to indicate its sweetness and its goodness. And so think about that as you work. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to speak today, and I would like to read a few things to you, but just getting acquainted with this computer, and I'm unable to go to the pages I want to without the video shutting off. So there was a sermon this morning. This is Sunday here, and my husband was talking about people's inability to just be happy and content, and that they would listen to the bad news and be all worried about that. And here was the quote that he said, "And they will block the bliss they have at their feet." I thought that was very interesting, because he talked about the things that matter the most is your faith, your home, your family. And that's the bliss you have right there at your feet. And this was from a very old book that he found this quote. They will block the bliss they have at their feet. So for a homemaker to have the motivation she needs to have a happy home, you really cannot have the news on or anything broadcasting from that box into your home, because even though it might give you some good company, eventually you might end up feeling a little bit strange, a little bit nervous, a little bit off, and not understand where it came from, because those things can get in you and after a while, you're just worrying about that all the time. And one of the things that we like to do is start the day off praying for every single person that you are worried about and that's in your family, particularly your family, because you might be the only one praying for your family members. And what it does is it of course it produces faith and it puts the matter in the hands of God, but it also reduces the anxiety that you feel and the tension. Also, make a mental list of what you'd like to accomplish. What would you like to do at home? What are some of the fun things you'd like to do? One of the things I wanted to do was get this truck bed fixed up so we could sit back here and have tea, and it's high off the ground. We could look down on everything and see a different view. And so I had it on my list for a long time. It took me a long time to get to this point because other things had to be in place before I could do it. I had to find everything. Then I had to clean the truck. And I had to, at the same time, do the daily work in my house and not let that slide. So I could only do a little bit at a time. And it took me many months to get back here and to fix this up. But I had it on a list, and on my list, I'd look at that list, and I'd look at the house, and I'd just feel overwhelmed. But if I sat down and prayed that God would bless me with the ability to do it, if it was His will, it sort of took the burden away and the tension away, and I was able to accomplish a lot more. So if you're having problems getting started, remember your great grandmothers and how in the world that they managed in those dust storms and those awful hard trying times. They still got up and fixed breakfast for their families and washed the clothes, and they had a routine, and that must have been what kept them stable and sane. And so instead of abandoning your resolve and all the stresses that come upon you, allow them to be a trigger for doing better and for overcoming. And so if you have anything to say about this and you've got any ideas, let me know, and please leave a comment for me on my blog. And I hope that this has been helpful to you. And I hate to go because I've only been talking for less than half an hour. But I hope that you can get something done, and you'll let me know what all that you did. And I hope you'll do something enjoyable for yourself too, as a reward. Think of something that you would like to do that's different, a little bit like what I've done out here in this old truck, or something else that maybe you'd like to do if you can't leave home. And I know many people can't leave home. They've got young children, and it's probably more trouble to go than to stay. And how to make your house and the home an adventure for them, that's quite a challenge, isn't it? And there's so much to do, and if you don't think that there is enough to do at home, order some of these books that I've been talking about, like Cheryl Mendelssohn's Home Comforts and Linda Lichter's Simple Social Graces. And there's another book you might want to read that you'd find quite amusing that I read and I thought was quite interesting, was the Jane Austen Diet. And I've mentioned some parts of it in some of my writings about when women used to go for a walk, they were walking their babies or they were walking with their children because they thought they needed to have the experience of the fresh air and the nature around them. So it wasn't about becoming slim and trim and fit as much as it was to have the mind fit and the soul fit. And so it was such an interesting book and rather amusing to read if you're a Jane Austen, particularly if you're a Jane Austen fan. I wish somebody would write one on the Jane Austen clothes and the clothing of the era. That would be kind of fun. And so if you've got any ideas, please leave me a comment. And your comments are what give me more ideas, especially questions. So I hope that you have a wonderful day and that this has motivated you and you've gotten a little bit done. And my next video, I hope if you could run the two together, maybe you could get something done. So until I see you next time, have a lovely day. And if it's in the middle of winter where you are and it's stormy, do you remember one of the episodes of Wives and Daughters? And I always like to scroll it back to where Mr. Gibson is looking out the window and he's with Hyacinth and it's raining like crazy, and he doesn't know if he should leave yet because it's so wet and rainy. And he says, stormy weather. I just love to hear him say that. But think of these things, stormy weather, dark, gloomy weather. Instead of it debilitating you, let it be a trigger to get ideas. And you don't have to stay home either. Homemakers have tremendous freedom. Most of us have cars, and we can go somewhere where we can get ideas, where it's more cheerful for us, and you don't have to stay there all the time. I know in the heat sometimes people just like to go just to get some air conditioning somewhere. So you don't have to feel that you have to stay in all the time. And you can go and get ideas somewhere else to bring into your home. And I have lots of new ideas, and I'm going to be doing some things with some friends pretty soon. I hope to show them to you on my blog, and I also hope to do more broadcasting out here in my yard, and particularly under the grapevine over there, and then I have a little tent over there and have a swing over there. Maybe we could do some more talks from outside. So I hope until then you have a wonderful day, that you'll make your list, that you'll get dressed, and that you'll pray, and that you'll get started, and you'll have great success today. Thank you and goodbye.